With YouTube attacking alternative media, please consider supporting the channel via Patreon for just $1 per month. Link below. Jumping over here into a tragic tale that is one that I want to discuss because I understand it. And it's so sad that it happened, but at the same time, I'm kind of thankful that it happened the way that it did because it averted the if this was to be unavoidable, I should say, what happened here ultimately ended with only one person being killed and not a large amount, merely 2 weeks after Parkland. So a Jackson Township boy intended to carry out a school shooting before killing himself. When this broke earlier today, I was shocked because that's not something you expect to hear. You know, he skipped right to the end. He right to the end of Super Columbine Massacre RPG, just went right there. And for that, I am thankful. But to his parents and to his family and to his friends, of course, I have nothing but the deepest of sympathies because this was clearly an issue that should have been seen and should have wholeheartedly been avoided. It says here that a 7th grade student developed an 8-step plan for carrying out a school shooting before he fatally shot himself last week at a Jackson Township Middle School. Investigators found documents on Keith Simmons' cell phones that revealed that the 13-year-old boy had an admiration for the Columbine High School shooters and intended to carry out a similar attack before he shot himself February 21st in a Jackson Memorial Middle School bathroom. This is information that's just now coming out, even though it is over a week old, which is just crazy that we're just learning about this now. The documents show that Simmons intended to conduct a school shooting and harm other individuals. This is coming from Chief Mark Brink. The boy concealed a .22 caliber long gun under his clothes during a bus ride to the middle school, and surveillance shows him walking out of the bathroom with the gun in his hands. At least 5 students were nearby, and it's unclear why Simmons turned around, walked back into the bathroom, and shot himself. Brink says, "I don't think we'll ever have an answer for that." And you know what? I don't think there's ever going to be a solid answer, but there's always going to be some form of speculation. If this kid was bullied in 7th grade at like 12 years old, right? Or 13-year-old boy, right there at that age, I mean, you can understand the motivations, of course, without condoning them, but you can understand what would drive him to that point. And then you could understand probably the instant regret that would wash over him. If surveillance shows him walking out of the bathroom with the gun in his hands, and then he saw the 5 students nearby, or I don't know if he saw them, but they were there. I mean, at this point, you know, they were just easy targets, fish in a barrel sort of thing. He turned around, walked back into the bathroom, and he shot himself. Now, why? Why would that have happened? The best answer I can think of, if I were to put myself in the mindset of that kid, would be that instantaneous fear. The fear of being caught. What his family will say, what his friends will say, what his parents will say, what will the news say, what will strangers say. And that oftentimes plays a factor in these particular situations. You get to the end of what you've done and you realize there's nowhere left to go. So the only way out is to take your own life. This kid, I think, got scared. I think he realized where he was. I think he realized what he was doing. I think he realized everything that was about to go down. And he froze and then had that immediate sense of, oh no, my parents. Oh no, I'm going to be grounded. Oh no, my life is over. And that's what prompted him to go and then end his life. And even though I said I'm thankful that no one else was hurt, if my speculation of this boy's motivations are even remotely correct, and I say this as a person who was bullied relentlessly in school, and I've talked openly about this before, I feel nothing but sympathy for him because he was in a place where he felt he was found, there was no outlet. No way out, I should say. And this is what happened. And the fact he had an 8-step plan, and he carried a 22 caliber long gun rifle. So, 22 is not like the most powerful gun out there, but it can take you out if it's shot properly. Now, Simons took the gun from his mother's house. He also had approximately 80 rounds of ammunition and several bottle rockets, batteries, and an aerosol can in his backpack in an apparent attempt to construct an explosive. Explosive experts determined that the materials could not have been combined to make a bomb. This is a 13-year-old kid, man. His knowledge of IEDs is going to be minimal. His knowledge of explosives are probably going to be relegated to that of Home Alone. What he sees in the movies, what he sees on pop culture. He had bottle rockets, batteries, and an aerosol can? You're not going to be able to MacGyver that into anything that's going to do anything. The kid was 13. That's the saddest part about it. Now, Simons died the next day at the Akron Children's Hospital. The Summit County Medical Examiner's Office said Thursday that ruled his death a suicide. Investigators discovered an 8-step plan for the shooting that Simons documented on his cell phone from February 14th to February 20th. So, obviously, whatever triggered this was probably Parkland, given that it was on the same day. The notes revealed Simons intended to die carrying out the attack, saying, "I'll look into those little britches' eyes before I kill them, and I'll have followers because I'm so awesome. I know someone will follow me just like I followed Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, me and them close to the same thing. It's going to be fun," he wrote in a February 17th note that named the Columbine Shooters. Now, this brings up an interesting topic of discussion, and one that ultimately should be discussed. It wasn't like he sat there and he quoted Nicholas Cruz as the person who he is modeling this after, but he might as well have. And I say that because he mentioned Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, the names of the guys from Columbine. I was 17 when Columbine happened. I was a junior in high school. I know their names. I know their faces. But this kid was born in 2004, 2005. 5 years after the events of Columbine. He would only know them by watching content that talked about them. And we always hear the stories of, over-glorifying the shooters, over-glorifying their plans, over-glorifying everything. And it becomes a very interesting discussion about whether or not you should, in fact, show their face and should, in fact, say their name. Philip DeFranco and Ben Shapiro have both said that they're not going to do it. Philly D's been doing it for a while. Shapiro just came to that realization and then decided to start virtue signaling on the rest of the media about it. I thought that was kind of funny. I'm in a different perspective, mostly because these are things I like to know. Not for the sake of wanting to copycat or to glorify their actions. For me personally, it boils down to just I want to understand why. I want motives. I want history. I want to see if this sort of thing can be looked at and possibly prevented. No one would have seen this coming. A 13-year-old kid trying to be like the Columbine shooters? It feels so out there. But then again, look at the Slender Man killings. Those girls are around the same age. What media these kids consume can have an impact. It's crazy. Anyway, the next day, Simons wrote that he was going to die doing it, saying, "I hate those people. I'd hurt and destroy something bigger, but my school's an easy target." That's pretty haunting. Simons added February 19th that he'd been considering an attack for a few weeks and thought about it a few months. And probably the Parkland shooting is what prompted him to act. Now is the time. Now is the time I will be known for infinity. Brink said investigators have not uncovered anything aside from the notes on the cell phone that would indicate Simons was planning an attack. The boy was not very active on social media. saying there's no indication anyone else was involved with Simon's plan. Investigators also have not uncovered any evidence that would suggest Simons had issues at home or school. Teachers described him as a good student. Now, this generally seems to blow that particular narrative out of the water, right? Where you've always got this like, oh, they were a loner, they were an outcast, they were booted out of school, everyone hated them. As the case with Nicholas Cruz. He was too much of an outcast for even the outcast kids at Parkland to like. I mean, that was the narrative that they went with, you know? He couldn't be at the emo kids table or emo club, whatever they called it. Emo gazebo, that's what it was. He couldn't be there. He was too much of a spaz, of a dweeb, of a geek, you know? And this kid is like almost the exact opposite of that, so to speak. No problems, no behavioral problems that they say here. He was a good student, but he was harboring a deep, dark secret. And that ultimately is what this kind of boils down to, that he was harboring this feeling. And that is one of the reasons why I honestly feel like mandated counseling for a lot of kids. Not like insane, intense psychotherapy, but I mean like just the general like, hey buddy, how's it going? Ask them some questions. Maybe dig a little bit beneath the surface. Figure out if they're plotting a mass murder. You know, a 13-year-old kid who's plotting this kind of thing for a few weeks or a few months is obviously trying to do something as a cry for help. There would have been some indication, I believe, but no one caught it. No one caught it. Investigators collected security video to develop a timeline for the boy's movements the day of the shooting. The video showed Simons leaves his house at 7:10 and walks with a notable limp to a bus stop. The boy concealed the gun under his clothes when he got onto the bus headed to the middle school. He arrived at the school at 7:44 a.m. and immediately proceeded to the bathroom. He walked out of the bathroom several minutes later carrying the gun in his hands. 4 students were in the hallway but didn't see the gun. Simons turned around, then walked back in the bathroom. He passed another student who saw the gun, and that student immediately went to tell an adult. Well, that student did the right thing. Staff members went to the bathroom to confront Simons, but found him wounded on the bathroom floor at 7:50. They yelled for someone to call 911. The shooting set off a panic among students, staff members, and parents who spent hours trying to pick up students from the middle school. Well, maybe there's a thing here. So between 7:44 and 7:50 is when he committed the act. The student passed him in the bathroom. It was probably the student who passed him in the bathroom. It's probably a student. That is probably what gave him that fright. That made him think everything was over, that it was all gone, that it was done. It was probably that. I think we've all been there, not to the extent where this kid is, but we've all been in those moments where we get caught doing something we shouldn't. Because it does honestly appear like he was going to go through with it. He had the items with him to commit the act. But he walked out, he got cold feet. And then he walked back in. And as he walked back in is when someone saw him with the weapon. And that's when he knew he was caught. And he being in a bathroom, he's effectively backed into a corner as it is. So the only course of action at that point is to, well, not the only course, but in his mind, the only course. Jackson Local School Superintendent Chris DiLoretto did not attend the news conference but released a brief statement asking parents to monitor their kids' social media accounts and secure their firearms. Kind of a moot point, considering this kid wasn't really active on social media and there was no warning signs. I mean, arguably it makes sense given what we've seen in other cases. But yeah, securing your firearms is probably for the best, right? Brink echoed those sentiments during a news conference, saying, "I believe this is a strong community. We have good people in this community. We need to come together like we've never come together before. One thing we absolutely need, we need parents to become parents. We need them to lock up their guns. We need them to check their kids' social media and see what they're up to, see what their plans are. And I'm not talking specific to this case, but all of the other cases in Stark County or with our young people." And he does have a point. Parents do, in fact, need to be parents. And I think it's just the convenience of technology that pushes that away sometimes. The Jackson Township Police Department will have 2 officers at the high school, 2 officers at the middle school, and 1 officer at each of the district's elementary school for the remainder of the school years as a precaution. Stark County Sheriff George Mayer is also leading a newly formed safety committee that will review school security. It's a tragic story. It's definitely a tragic story. And I feel like it's one that could have ultimately been avoided had there been some kind of warning that the parents would have gotten. And it's entirely possible that as time goes on, that warning will become apparent as to what it was. But at the same time, this event happened on the 21st, and we're just really hearing about it now. Right? It wasn't like it was anything. It wasn't like it was anything else than that. That's the crazy thing about it. It wasn't Parkland. It wasn't 17 students dead. It was a kid who went to go do it, got cold feet, got caught, and then took his own life. And, what bugs me about this, and I could just be the only one, and I'm fine with that, is this is a story in general where you've got the cops are saying we're going to be, as a precaution, posting cops at the schools to make sure for the rest of the year. But at no point are the school district and the superintendent and the mayor or the city council looking at the idea of allocating funds for a counselor to go in and talk to these kids. Because when these kids are at that age, they let out cries for help. And these cries are maybe not always 100% identifiable, but I think with the right person looking into their mental health, that they might be able to notice something and see something and then help those kids out of that moment in their life that would cause them to do this. Something caused this kid to want to bring a .22 caliber gun to school and kill his classmates. And he modeled everything off of the Columbine shooting. I don't know if we'll ever know the answer as to why anything happened the way it did. And as tragic as this story is, not having the answer is arguably not as bad, but it's still pretty bad. Because without knowing why, it's hard to develop a profile to keep it from happening again.